Thinking about those conversations that really make you think, that's kind of the idea behind this deep dive for you today. We've got some really insightful material here. It feels almost like listening in on a very personal pep talk about your own learning path. And our mission really is to unpack the ideas in this source about your internal dialogue, how it helps
Mm.
or maybe hinders your growth.
It is striking, isn't it, how it speaks directly to the listener right away. It acknowledges their effort. It says, I'm proud of you because you care. Why start there, do you think, instead of just like jumping into tips?
That's a really good point. It feels like it's setting a foundation, right?
Yeah.
Recognizing that just caring, just deciding to learn something new or get better at something, that's actually a huge deal. It makes you appreciate the energy you're already putting in, even before you see big results, that initial spark.
Exactly. And it links that care straight to being willing to get a bit uncomfortable.
Hmm.
The source puts it as choosing to grow, choosing to be uncomfortable
Hmm.
again and again.
Oh.
That feeling, that little bit of unease when you're stretching yourself, that's often where the real learning happens.
Okay, so we have this base layer, effort, courage, caring. But then the source shifts gears, and this is really interesting, to something that can either boost all that effort or, well, tear it down, our own inner beliefs. It talks about how even the best systems, the best plans, can kind of fall flat if that voice inside your head is constantly critical.
Oh, absolutely. It's like trying to drive with the emergency brake on. And it gives some really common examples, doesn't it? Those little phrases, I'm not good enough, or I'll never be fluent, maybe I'm too old, I'm too slow for this, I'm just not like them. And from a neuroscience perspective, actually repeating those things, it literally strengthens those pathways in the brain, makes them feel more real, more true, even if they aren't. So pushing back isn't just, thinking positive, it's actual brain work.
Hearing those laid out like that, it really hits home, doesn't it? And it leads right into that direct question for you, the listener. What do you believe about yourself deep down?
Mm.
Are those beliefs helping you grow or holding you back? Wow. That really makes you pause and think, doesn't it? What are those stories I tell myself?
Such a critical question. And often, those core beliefs, they aren't really based on, like, objective fact. They might come from old experiences, maybe things people said to us years ago, or just constantly comparing ourselves, realizing they're essentially stories we've bought into. That's the first step. Because stories can be rewritten.
And that's exactly the next turn it takes. It really leans into our ability as humans to change. It makes the point that we can rewrite those limiting narratives. We can build new identities, new ways of seeing ourselves. That's such a hopeful message, especially if you feel kind of stuck,
Yeah.
in that negative loop.
Yeah, but it's also realistic. It doesn't pretend it's like a magic wand. Building new self-perceptions, challenging those old ingrained beliefs, that takes work, consistent effort, questioning those automatic thoughts. But the underlying message is strong. Change is always possible.
Okay, so how do we actually do that? The source then offers a really concrete tool. It calls it belief tracking. Interesting name. Let's unpack that a bit. How does it work?
It's very practical, actually. The example it gives is, say you make a mistake, and your immediate thought is, ugh, I'm so stupid. Belief tracking means first, you catch that thought. You notice it. Then, crucially, you pause. And you actively reframe it. Rewrite it into something more, true and helpful, like changing I'm so stupid to something like, okay, I'm learning here. This is just part of the process.
And the why behind that rewriting is key, isn't it? It's saying that by deliberately changing the words we use inside our own heads, we're actually kind of rewiring how our brain looks at the situation. You're actively shifting that internal script from judgment to maybe curiosity or growth.
Precisely. That internal language. It shapes our reality more than we realize. So choosing different words, more constructive, growth-focused words, starts to change your whole perspective on yourself and what you're capable of.
Then the source is something really effective, I think. It shares a personal story about feeling invisible, missing her own language when she was first immersed in English. And it highlights that gap between what people see on the outside, the smile, the effort, and the internal battle, the self-doubt.
Yeah, that vulnerability is powerful. It makes the struggle feel normal. Relatable. It reminds you that, hey, even people who seem like they have it all figured out, they've likely felt that same uncertainty. And the takeaway from that story is really about just keeping going, showing up, taking those small steps, even when it feels hard or awkward.
One sentence at a time, one awkward conversation at a time. I like that. It breaks down these big, maybe scary goals into just the next small action, and it values that action.
Right. And that flows perfectly into the next point about what progress actually looks like, because it's usually not that smooth, straight line upwards we imagine. It's often messy, there are plateaus, maybe steps back, and what the source calls those tiny wins that no one celebrates.
Hmm.
Things like suddenly understanding a whole sentence without translating in your head, or managing to reply to someone with a bit more confidence than last time.
And it really stresses that those small wins matter. That's so important. It's easy to just focus on the big final goal, right? And totally miss the fact that you are making progress along the way. Acknowledging those little victories, actually appreciating them, that can be huge for keeping your motivation up. It proves you're moving.
Which links into making this whole thing sustainable. You can't sprint forever. So the conversation validates taking breaks, slowing down when you need to. But it draws a really clear line between resting and actually quitting.
It's okay to pause. It's different from giving up entirely. That's such a crucial distinction, isn't it? Giving yourself permission to rest. It's about self-compassion, really. Treating yourself like you treat a friend. You wouldn't expect them to go full tilt constantly. Recharging is part of the deal.
Absolutely. And right after that, there's this wave of just pure validation aimed at the listener. Statements like, you're doing enough. You are enough. Your journey is valid. And crucially, your learning is improving every single day, even when it doesn't feel like it.
Hmm.
Why are those direct affirmations so necessary, do you think, against that negative self-talk?
It feels like providing the antidote directly, doesn't it? Like consciously feeding yourself the counter-argument to those doubts that pop up automatically. You're actively building a more supportive inner voice to challenge the critical one.
Exactly that. And then, building on all this, it offers one last really practical tool, the 3 A's. Awareness, acceptance, adjustment. Let's walk through those. So awareness is step one. Simply noticing the thought when it arrives, becoming aware of it.
Right, developing that observer self almost. Being able to spot those unhelpful thoughts as they happen without immediately getting swept away by them.
Then A number 2 is acceptance. And this one can feel a bit tricky. It doesn't mean you agree with a negative thought. It just means you acknowledge it's there without judging it or fighting it. The source suggests thinking, that's interesting, which is a great way to create a bit of space.
Yeah, like watching a cloud float by. You see it, you note it, but you don't have to grab onto it or push it away. You just let it drift. That detachment itself can take away some of its power, I imagine.
It really can. And then comes the third A, adjustment. This is the active part. Gently shifting the thought. Replacing it with something kinder, truer, more helpful. The examples are spot on. Changing I'm bad at speaking to maybe I struggle sometimes, but I know I'm improving. Or shifting I don't know enough to I'm learning more every day.
Those are subtle shifts, but they feel really profound. It's about reframing, seeing challenges not as proof of failure, but as part of learning, and acknowledging the effort, the forward movement, however small.
And it wraps up by saying this whole system, awareness, acceptance, adjustment, it starts in the mind, sure, but it ripples out. It affects how we approach everything, not just learning. It's about building a more resilient, maybe kinder inner foundation.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, it's just so clear how much that internal conversation really directs our experience, doesn't it? And this source gives some really valuable ways to start steering that conversation more intentionally.
Definitely. And those final guiding thoughts it leaves us with, be kind, be consistent, be curious. Those feel like really solid principles for any kind of growth, really. Kindness toward yourself, consistency in the practice, and curiosity about the process.
And it circles back to that core idea, systems over goals, every single time. A good reminder that it's the daily practices, the habits, the systems like belief tracking or the 3 A's that really carry you forward in the long run, more than just staring at the finish line.
It really is about embracing the journey, isn't it? The whole messy, imperfect process. And knowing that consistently using these mental tools, tuning that inner dialogue, that's what builds momentum and resilience.
Really good insights.
And one of the first things that jumped out was this connection, this link between who you see yourself as, your identity.
Yes. And the habits you actually manage to stick with. It's not just about wanting something.
It's deeper than that.
It really is. They talked about this dynamic, didn't they, between identity and habits. It's not just one way.
No, it influences each other.
Exactly, like the example they gave wanting to be fluent in Spanish.
Right. But deep down, you still think, oh, I'm just not good at languages.
Yeah, that internal story, that I'm not a language person identity, it creates this massive conflict, doesn't it?
It totally puts the brakes on things. Your own self-perception gets in the way of your goals.
And the really powerful flip side they offered, the key insight, I think,
Go on.
is that You don't wait to become fluent or confident or whatever it is before you start acting like it.
Ah, so it's the reverse. You act the part first.
Kind of, yeah. You start embodying the behaviors of the person you want to become, even in tiny ways.
Yeah.
And slowly, gradually, that identity starts to, well, to take root.
Okay, so let's make this super practical for someone listening, maybe focusing on their English learning.
Good idea.
How does that identity shift apply? Think about how you talk about it. Do you say, I'm trying to learn English?
That trying implies struggle, maybe doubt.
Exactly. Versus shifting to something like, I am an English speaker
Mm.
in progress, or I'm practicing English daily.
It's subtle, isn't it? But that change in self-description, how you frame it in your own head,
Yeah.
it can genuinely affect how often you practice, how willing you are to, put yourself out there.
It reminds me of that analogy they used. Was it about shoes?
Yeah. New shoes, they feel a bit stiff at first, maybe not quite you.
Right, a bit awkward.
But the more you wear them, they soften up, mold to your feet. They become your shoes.
Okay, I get it. So by consistently doing the things that English speaker does, listening, reading, trying to speak, even if it feels awkward initially, you start to feel like that person. You're breaking in that new identity.
Perfectly put. You're breaking in your English-speaking self. It raises that question, though. How intentional are you about describing yourself in relation to English?
Do you actively notice the small wins? Do you say, hey, I understood that, or I managed to use that new phrase?
Yeah. Or even just affirming, I'm getting better at this. It reinforces that identity shift, makes the effort feel more aligned with who you're becoming.
Okay, so identity is foundational. What's next? Once you start aligning who you are with what you want.
Then comes the crucial part about starting small. Like really, really small.
Almost laughably small, right?
Exactly. Comically small was the phrase they used, because we tend to do the opposite, don't we?
Oh, totally. Go all in. Monday morning, right, I'm going to study English for 2 hours every single day.
And by Thursday.
Yeah, life happens. You miss one day, feel guilty, and the whole thing collapses. Fizzles out.
Precisely. So the counterintuitive thing they found so effective was these tiny actions. The example was reading Spanish, wasn't it?
Yeah, just for 1 minute before bed.
1 minute. The bar is so low, it's almost harder not to do it right. There's virtually no resistance.
And the interesting bit is what happens next. That 1 minute often wasn't just 1 minute, because starting is the hardest part. Once you've started,
You've broken the inertia. You're already doing it. So quite often, that 1 minute would turn into 5 or 10 or 15.
because momentum builds. It's like that tiny snowball idea.
Exactly. Start small, fairly noticeable, but as it rolls.
It picks up more snow, gets bigger, faster.
Yeah,
An avalanche of progress eventually, maybe.
maybe. But the point is, that consistency, even at a tiny level, builds confidence, and confidence builds capability.
So for someone learning English, on those days where an hour feels impossible,
Yeah, overwhelming.
just commit to reading one sentence or listening to 30 seconds of a podcast.
Make it so easy you can't say no. Make the excuse harder than the action itself.
I love that. Make the excuse harder than the action. That's the key to consistency, isn't it?
It really seems to be. Okay, so I've got identity, starting small. What about making it even easier to start?
Ah, this is where cues come in, right? Those little triggers.
Yeah, the silent nudges. Things in your environment or routine that prompt an action, often without you even thinking about it.
Like the coffee example they shared. Making coffee. Automatically reaching for the phone.
A totally ingrained habit loop. Cue, brewing coffee. Response, check phone.
But then, the clever part, they didn't try to just stop reaching for something.
No, that's fighting against the current. Instead, they changed the environment slightly.
Put the English notebook right there, where the phone usually was.
Exactly. So the same cue brewing coffee now triggers a different response. Pick up the notebook. You're hijacking the existing pathway.
That's smart. So think about your day. What do you do automatically? Brushing your teeth?
Yeah.
Making breakfast? Getting dressed?
And can you link a tiny English action to one of those existing habits? Like, while the kettle boils, review one flashcard.
Or, while you brush your teeth, maybe listen to a 1-minute English news summary. Stacking habits.
Stacking habits, yeah. And another practical cue they mentioned, the phone lock screen.
Oh yeah, changing it to a prompt like, name 3 things you see in English.
So every time you pick up your phone, which is probably, dozens of times a day.
You get this little micro prompt, a gentle nudge back to English, constantly reinforcing it.
It's about making these cues work for you, embedding them in your daily life.
Which leads really nicely into the whole idea of environment, doesn't it? It's not just about cues, but the whole setting,
Absolutely. Your environment can be like your silent teammate.
or your biggest saboteur, pulling you off track constantly.
So true. And that story about the English journal really highlighted it.
The one stuck in the drawer.
Yeah. Good intentions, bought the journal, gonna use it every day, but it's hidden away.
Out of sight, out of mind. Literally.
But the moment it moved, placed on the nightstand, pen right there, ready to go.
Suddenly it gets used. Not because of a sudden burst of willpower.
No, but because the environment changed. The trigger was better. It was visible, accessible, easy.
It lowered the friction,
Yeah.
made the desired action the path of least resistance.
Which is huge. So look around your space, where you learn, where you relax. Is it set up to help you engage with English?
Are your books easy to grab? Is the app on your home screen? Is your listening device nearby?
Like leaving headphones by your toothbrush? Brilliant little hack for listening while getting ready.
You're basically setting little positive traps for yourself, making it easy to fall into the good habit.
And they had some fun ideas too, didn't they? Post-it notes on the mirror.
Yeah, like what did you dream about in English?
Oh.
Keeping a favorite English YouTube channel tab open.
Little environmental tweaks that make engaging with English feel more natural and less like a chore you have to force yourself into.
It's about designing your world to support your goals. Okay, so we're shaping identity, starting small, using cues, designing the environment. What else keeps the engine running?
Well, seeing that you're actually making progress. And that brings us to tracking.
Right. Now, tracking can sometimes sound a bit, I don't know, clinical or like pressure.
Yeah, like you're grading yourself. And if you miss a day, you feel awful. But that's not really the most helpful way to see it.
So how should we reframe it?
Think of it less as judgment and more as, well, momentum building, making your effort visible.
Ah, okay. Like the example of marking a calendar.
Exactly. Just a simple X or a check mark for every day you did, say, 10 minutes of English practice.
And after a week or two, you see this chain forming.
And psychologically, you really don't want to break that chain. It becomes motivating in itself.
It's a visual representation of your consistency. Taps into that desire for completion.
And it doesn't need to be complicated. A sticky note with tally marks, a simple app, a line in a notebook, whatever works for you. The key is just seeing it.
Because seeing the progress, however small, fuels motivation.
Yeah, right.
It proves your efforts are adding up.
Especially on those days when you feel like you're stuck. Seeing that chain reminds you that you have been consistent. It keeps you going.
And for English learners, what's important is what you track, isn't it?
Definitely. Don't track, did I speak perfectly, or did I understand everything? That can be discouraging.
Track the effort, the time spent engaging.
Yeah. I read for 15 minutes. I listened for 10 minutes. I practiced speaking for 5. Focus on the input, the process, not necessarily the immediate perfect outcome.
That makes sense. It keeps the focus on the controllable action. Okay, what about willpower? We often think we just need more of it.
The willpower myth,
Yeah.
that it's this endless resource we can just summon on demand.
But it's not really like that, is it?
No, the podcast host made a great comparison. It's like your phone battery.
Okay, finite.
Finite. And every decision you make, big or small, drains it a little bit throughout the day.
That explains why making even simple choices feels hard by 9 p.m. Decision fatigue.
Exactly. So relying only on willpower to force yourself to study English after a long, draining day, well, it's often a losing battle.
So the solution isn't necessarily more willpower.
It's needing less willpower by setting things up better.
Through systems.
Through systems. They gave that example about their own podcasting consistency. It wasn't about white-knuckling it.
No, it's about preparation, right? Setting up the equipment, outlining stuff the night before.
Yes. Removing the decisions and the friction in the moment. When the time came to record, everything was ready. Less willpower needed.
So applying that to English learning. Prepare the night before.
Could be huge. Lay out your notebook, open the app, choose the video you'll watch, write down the sentence you'll practice.
So when morning comes, or whenever your study time is, the path is already paved.
You just have to walk down it. It reduces that mental hurdle, that reliance on feeling motivated right then. Systems are about preparation, making execution easier.
Preparation over perspiration almost.
In a way, yeah. Okay, this next one feels softer, maybe, but really important. Celebration.
Acknowledging the wins, which we often just skip over, don't we?
We really do. We finish something and immediately think about the next thing, or what we didn't do perfectly.
Or we downplay it. Oh, it was only 5 minutes.
But the insight here is that every little win, every bit of effort you acknowledge is like a deposit.
A deposit. Into what?
Into your self-belief account. You're building evidence for yourself that you can do this, that you are making progress.
And that self-belief makes you more resilient later on.
Exactly. I liked that slightly funny example the host gave, saying, "Nice one, Evan," to himself after recording.
Yeah, even for short sessions, it sounds a bit silly.
But it was intentional. It was about reinforcing the identity. I am someone who creates consistently, not just, I'm trying.
So for English learners, after even a short practice session,
Take a second, literally just pause, maybe smile, acknowledge it internally. Good job, or I did it, or proud of that effort.
it sounds small, but it connects the effort with a positive feeling in your brain.
Precisely. It reinforces the behavior. You're telling your brain, hey, doing this feels good, which makes you more likely to do it again. It helps build the habit loop.
Okay, identity, small steps, cues, environment, tracking, managing willpower, celebration. That's a solid toolkit for systems. Is there a final piece?
There is. And it's about zooming out a bit, connecting all these daily actions, these systems, to something bigger.
The bigger picture, your why.
Your why. And it doesn't have to be some rigid 10-year plan etched in stone. It's more about a sense of direction, a feeling you're moving towards.
Something that gives the daily grind meaning.
Yes. The podcast host shared their why for learning English, connecting with people globally.
Right. That deeper reason kept them going, even when progress felt slow.
Because the why pulls you forward when the daily practice feels tough or boring. It turns effort into something meaningful.
So for anyone listening, it's worth really thinking about your why for English.
Go beyond just pass the test or get the job if you can. What are the deeper reasons?
Connecting with family, feeling more confident traveling,
Yeah.
accessing new ideas, personal growth.
Whatever it is for you. And actually write it down. Keep it somewhere visible. Let it be the fuel.
Because when the system feels a bit routine, the why reminds you why you built it in the first place.
Exactly. Systems aren't always glamorous, like they said, but they're reliable. And linked to a strong why, they become incredibly powerful. Life-changing even, with consistency.
And speaking of language, one direct benefit for listeners focusing on English was the vocabulary part in that podcast source.
Oh yeah, Charlotte's breakdown, that was useful. Highlighting words that came up naturally in their discussion about systems.
Words like flip, insight, barely, identity, of course, momentum, avalanche.
Consistency, flashy, cues, triggers, instinctively, saboteur.
Willpower, obsess, outcome, intentional, reliable, reflect. Quite a list.
And understanding those words, maybe trying to use them, really helps you sound more natural and confident in English, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's part of embodying that English speaker identity we talked about earlier, using the language effectively.
It all ties together. The vocabulary becomes part of the system for improvement.
Yeah, navigating those dips in motivation, or when you just hit a wall. That seems to be the real challenge for staying consistent long term.
That's it. And those moments, they happen to everyone, feeling stuck, frustrated.
Oh yeah, having days where you'd rather do anything else.
Exactly. And the source of stress, that's totally normal. It's part of the process.
So our mission, let's say, for this deep dive is to arm listeners with some practical, emotionally smart strategies.
Ways to handle that internal side of things.
Yeah, to build systems not just for doing the learning, but for staying engaged, moving forward, even when it feels tough. Okay, so first up, the sources talk about something maybe a bit unexpected. Self-compassion. Let's get into that.
Yeah, it's fascinating, this idea that how we talk to ourselves, especially when we mess up or fall short.
That internal chatter.
Right. It's not just background noise. The sources frame it as a really powerful system. It can either help you bounce back or, keep you stuck.
And they draw this really clear line, don't they?
Yeah.
Between being self-critical and being, well, self-compassionate.
Definitely.
We all know that inner critic, right? The one piping up with, see? Told you couldn't do it. Or why are you so slow?
Yeah, that voice.
But the sources argue that kind of internal beatdown actually backfires. It can trigger like a threat response.
That's the idea. It makes our brains feel unsafe, basically. Less open to learning, more likely to just avoid the whole thing.
Which is the opposite of what you want when you're trying to learn.
Yeah, exactly. Self-compassion, though, it's a different approach entirely. It's acknowledging, okay, this is hard.
Mistakes happen.
Right.
Yeah.
It's part of learning. It's treating yourself with the same kindness you'd probably give a friend who is struggling.
And that taps into a different part of the brain, like safety and connection.
Yeah, it makes you feel more secure, more willing to actually try again. Less afraid of messing up.
The source gave this great example. Instead of, I'm so bad at this.
Mm-hmm.
Shifting it to something like, okay, I'm still learning. And that's all right. I'm getting better, bit by bit.
It sounds simple, maybe, but the feeling behind those two statements is completely different.
Totally night and day. One just slams the door shut. The other kind of keeps it open.
Precisely. And if you think about your own learning, when you hit a snag,
Yeah.
what's that instant reaction?
Yeah. Do you jump down your own throat? Or can you pause, take a breath?
That shift, that internal conversation, the sources really stress it. It's like a foundational system for building resilience.
Resilience, yeah. Seeing setbacks not as I failed, but as, okay, what can I learn here?
Exactly. Opportunities for growth, not proof of inadequacy.
Whether it's, I don't know, a new language,
Sure.
coding, some tricky work thing, that inner voice is always there, isn't it?
Always.
Okay, so related to managing that voice, the sources also talk about building reset rituals. Sounds like a practical way to cope when things get tough.
Yeah, precisely. These are like small, almost automatic actions you can take
Okay.
to help yourself recover emotionally, after a really frustrating session or just a day where nothing clicked.
Little mental pit stops.
Kind of little pauses to just regain your balance.
The examples were really relatable too. Like if you're learning Spanish and feel overwhelmed,
Mm-hmm.
just put on a favorite Spanish song. Enjoy the music, don't analyze it.
Right. Or if a full lesson feels like way too much, maybe just watch a fun, light YouTube clip in that language instead.
Yeah, these aren't huge, heavy commitments.
No, that's the point. They also mentioned something as simple as a 5-minute walk. No phone. Just breathe.
Disconnect for a bit.
Exactly. The key is they're short, easy, hopefully enjoyable, not another chore.
Right, not something else to feel guilty about not doing perfectly.
No, it's about creating a little mental break, shifting away from that frustration spiral.
Towards something more neutral or even positive.
Yeah. So you have these go-to strategies ready. When that motivation dips or frustration bubbles up,
You know what to do, you don't have to figure it out in the moment.
right. The source even suggested listeners might want to, pause and jot down a few ideas for themselves. What could their reset rituals be?
That proactive planning element seems really key.
It really is. Thinking about these little comforts before you need them, you're basically building your own emotional first aid kit for learning.
I like that, a first aid kit.
Yeah, so when you inevitably hit that wall, you don't waste energy figuring out how to feel better. You just grab a tool from the kit
Step back, regroup.
and then come back to it maybe a little fresher, interrupting that negative loop.
Okay, so being kinder inside, having reset buttons.
Mhm.
What about staying on track, like over the weeks and months? Accountability came up.
It did, yeah, but the sources frame it in a really specific way.
How so?
It's about support and encouragement, crucially, not punishment.
Ah, okay. Because accountability can sometimes sound a bit harsh, like
Yeah.
someone checking up on you.
Exactly. We might think of strict deadlines or criticism for missing them, but this is different. It's about creating a system, maybe a network, that helps you stay motivated.
Feel like you're part of something.
Yeah, a sense of shared progress. The example was like a small online group, people just sharing, hey, did my 20 minutes today.
And others just chime in with encouragement. No judgment.
Right, just that simple act of being seen, having your effort acknowledged, apparently that's really powerful.
Yeah, I can see that. It taps into that basic human thing of wanting connection, wanting your efforts noticed.
Mm-hmm. And it combats that feeling of isolation, too, which can definitely creep in when you're learning something on your own.
Oh, for sure. Knowing others are hitting similar bumps in the road, that helps.
Definitely provides an emotional boost, makes you feel less alone.
The source also had this interesting idea for solo learners, like accountability to yourself.
Oh, yeah. How did that work?
Leaving yourself voice notes, maybe, or just recording a couple of sentences each day about what you learned or practiced.
Huh. Creating your own little progress log.
Yeah, like audio snapshots. So even without someone else checking in, you're creating that system yourself.
And listening back later? Wow, that could be really motivating, couldn't it? Seeing how far you've actually come.
Totally. Especially on days when you feel like you're getting nowhere.
Plus, as the source noted, if it is language learning, bonus pronunciation practice.
Huh, true. Good point. It really makes you think, though, what kind of supportive accountability could work for you? Whether it's with others or just you.
Mm-hmm. Definitely food for thought.
Okay, so we've covered navigating the tough spots. But what about the bigger picture? The sources really hammered home the importance of rest.
Yes. Which, again, Might feel a bit counterintuitive in our, always on culture.
Right, the hustle harder mantra.
Exactly. But the sources argue pretty strongly against that, especially for effective learning. Rest isn't just stopping because you're tired.
It's active, part of the process.
Essential, apparently. They frame it as a genuinely productive strategy.
Productive. How so?
Well, the benefits mentioned were things like faster learning overall, much better memory consolidation.
Ah, so stuff actually sticks better.
Yeah. And even increased creativity, which is interesting.
Okay, connecting that to the brain
Yeah.
during rest, especially sleep, that's when the brain is actually processing, right? Filing things away.
That's the understanding. It's consolidating new information, strengthening those neural pathways you build while studying.
So skimping on sleep, pulling all-nighters.
It can actually undermine the hard work you put in during the day.
Wow, so that extra hour of cramming might actually be less effective than an extra hour of sleep.
That's precisely the argument the sources make. Sleep is when the memory magic happens, basically.
So building rest into the system,
Yeah.
scheduling it, protecting it.
Yes. Whether that's a full day off or just a really consistent bedtime routine, it's not a luxury for learning. It's presented as a necessity.
Makes you wonder, doesn't it? Are you actually planning for rest as part of your learning or just hoping it happens?
Or worse, seeing it as time lost from studying.
Yeah, that's a big mindset shift. Okay, one last piece of this emotional toolkit from the sources. Gratitude.
Gratitude. Which, again, might sound a bit soft.
Maybe a little woo-woo for a habit-building discussion.
Possibly. But the sources present it as a really practical tool for sustaining effort, for staying grounded.
Okay, practical how?
It's about deliberately taking a moment to recognize your progress and the value in the journey itself, especially when it feels really long or hard.
Right. Noticing what is working, not just what isn't yet.
Exactly. The examples were super simple. Like, each night, jot down one thing you're proud of accomplishing that day
Just one thing.
and one thing you're grateful for. And they specifically suggested learners could note, I'm proud I practiced today.
Ah, acknowledging the effort itself, even if it wasn't perfect.
Precisely. It shifts your focus away from the giant mountain still ahead towards the steps you have taken, no matter how small.
And that builds a sense of accomplishment, makes you want to keep going.
That's the idea. It fosters motivation. And the sources suggest it actually cultivates joy in the process.
Joy.
Yeah. And if you find some joy in it, well, that makes the whole thing way more sustainable, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Okay, so let's quickly recap this emotional toolkit we've pulled from the sources.
Sure. So number 1, self-compassion. Be kind to yourself, especially during setbacks.
Got it. Number 2.
Reset rituals, those small actions to help you bounce back emotionally.
Okay. Then accountability.
As support, not punishment,
Lots.
whether with others or just tracking for yourself.
Right. And then prioritizing rest.
Yeah, seeing rest, especially sleep, as a productive part of learning.
And finally, gratitude.
Actively practicing gratitude to notice progress and build joy.
That's a pretty solid toolkit.
Uh,
And the sources were clear, right? You don't have to implement all of this tomorrow.
oh, definitely not. It's about maybe picking one thing that resonates, one piece to start with.
And letting it develop. Building these emotional habits takes time, too.
Exactly. It's a process. Be patient with yourself as you try these things out.
Be a bit kinder to ourselves during that whole learning process.
Exactly. And this isn't about, quick fixes or anything. Their conversation really focuses on the internal journey, the perspective shift.
Right. It feels very human. It's like they tapped into something a lot of us feel, but maybe don't always talk about, the pressure we put on ourselves.
Absolutely. That's what makes it compelling. It's honest. They're sharing this empathetic viewpoint. And inside that are some key insights about, well, why we often become our own worst critics and how that actually gets in the way.
Okay, so let's dive in. Sarah kicks things off with something so simple, but wow, it hits hard. You are not behind. There's no race, no stopwatch.
Powerful, isn't it?
It really is. It feels like, I don't know, permission to just be where you are. But why is that so hard for us to actually believe deep down?
Well, that feeling of being behind, it's tangled up in how we compare ourselves, isn't it? Society often measures us against benchmarks, against our peers right from school.
Yeah, you get ranked, you get graded.
Exactly. So we internalize this idea that learning should look a certain way, follow a certain timeline, and then you add social media, these curated snapshots of success.
Oh yeah, makes it worse.
It definitely amplifies it, creates this kind of distorted view of normal progress. But Sarah's point is crucial. Learning is personal. Your background, how you learn, the time you actually have, it's all unique.
So comparing yourself is like comparing apples and oranges. Or maybe apples and, I don't know, screwdrivers. It just doesn't make sense.
Precisely. That yardstick we measure ourselves against, it's often an illusion. It doesn't account for your specific path.
That makes a lot of sense. I definitely feel that pressure sometimes. Like there's this checklist in my head, things I should have done by now. And when you don't tick the boxes, yeah, it's deflating.
Hmm. And Sarah's words are almost like a direct challenge to that, giving us space to just focus on our own journey right here, right now.
It's about taking back control, maybe. Owning your own pace.
Yes, reclaiming ownership. When you let go of that external should, you actually make room for, well, for real motivation to grow. Learning becomes less about keeping up and more about, genuine curiosity and discovery.
And that actually sounds like a much better environment for learning anything, really.
Yeah.
More relaxed, more self-accepting.
That's where real progress often happens, I think. Okay, so moving on, Evan talks about something else, celebrating quiet effort.
Right. That caught my attention, too. Like listening when you're tired, speaking when you're scared, stuff nobody sees.
Exactly, because the world tends to focus on the shiny results, doesn't it? Perfect grammar, fluent speech, big wins, as they put it.
Yeah, the finish line stuff.
But Evan's highlighting the process, those unseen moments, the internal battles. They're fundamental. Think about the energy it takes just to focus when you're drained.
It's huge, actually.
It is. Or the vulnerability of trying to speak a new language, knowing you might mess up. That's courage. These quiet efforts are the engine. They build resilience, understanding, a growth mindset.
Even if the result isn't, perfect right away.
Especially then. It's valuing the act of engaging, the showing up, even when it's hard. That itself is a kind of success.
It's like we need to rewire our own reward system to notice and appreciate the trying, not just the succeeding.
That's a great way to put it. Recalibrate the system. When you acknowledge those quiet efforts internally, you shift the narrative. It becomes less about external judgment and more about appreciating your own commitment.
Which probably helps you keep going when things get tough.
Absolutely. It sustains motivation, especially during those inevitable plateaus or rough patches. Progress isn't always obvious. Sometimes it's that internal persistence.
Okay, then Sarah shares something really relatable about stopping practice, feeling stuck.
Yeah, we've all been there, right?
Oh, definitely. Life gets in the way. Things happen.
And she mentions this message she heard. Start again. You're not starting from zero. You're starting from experience.
Wow, that really landed for me.
It's such a powerful reframe, isn't it? Because we do tend to think, oh no, I took a break, I've lost everything, I have to start all over.
Totally, like it was all for nothing.
But it wasn't. The things you learn, the connections your brain made, they don't just evaporate. Maybe they're a bit rusty, sure.
Yeah, it's a bit of oiling.
Exactly. But you're building on something that's already there. You have experience. You're not back at square one.
It's like that analogy you mentioned, riding a bike. You might wobble a bit after years off, but you don't forget how. The core is still there.
Precisely. And Evan adds that key point. Falling isn't failing. It's part of the climb.
Yeah, that's good. So the stumbles, the setbacks, they're not signs you should stop.
Quite the opposite. They're part of the landscape of learning anything meaningful. If you see them not as failures, but just part of the climb, it changes everything.
Less self-blame, maybe. More, okay, what did I learn from that stumble?
Exactly. It becomes data, information for the next step. Each time you get back up, you're actually building resilience, getting stronger.
And speaking of getting back up, they then directly address people who've, fallen off your routine or been quiet for a bit.
That direct address is important.
And the message is just so welcoming. The door is always open. No judgment.
That's key, isn't it? Because the fear of judgment or feeling like you're too far behind now, that can really stop people from starting again.
Yeah, the shame or guilt.
But Sarah and Evan just remove that. They create this space of acceptance. Come back whenever you're ready. No explanation needed.
And I love the next part. Every time you come back stronger. You come back more aware, more grounded, more you. That's a really empowering thought.
It reframes the break itself, doesn't it? It's not lost time. Maybe you gained perspective during that time away. Maybe you figured out what you really want.
So the restart isn't a step back. It's actually a step forward in a different way, integrating what you learned, even while you were away from the main task.
Exactly. The break becomes part of your story, part of your growth. Learning isn't always linear. Sometimes stepping away and returning leads to deeper progress.
Okay, shifting gears slightly. A big question for many learners, especially language learners, I imagine, is, but what if I never get fluent? That big intimidating F word.
Ah, yes. Fluency. The holy grail for some.
And Evan's take on this is, well, it's really gentle and kind of revolutionary. He says, essentially, you already are fluent because it's not just about fast sentences.
Hmm. It's about connection. That's the key word he uses.
Connection. Talk more about that. How did that redefine fluency?
Well, think about the purpose of language. Fundamentally, it's to connect, right? To share ideas, understand others, bridge gaps between people.
Okay, yeah.
So if you can do that even with imperfect grammar, even with a smaller vocabulary, if you can make yourself understood and understand someone else, you are connecting. You are achieving the core purpose. That's a form of fluency.
So fluency isn't just linguistic gymnastics.
Yeah.
It's relational. It's about achieving understanding between people.
Exactly. It moves away from just technical perfection towards, well, towards the human element of communication.
And then he goes even further. He says, being here, listening, feeling, learning is already, get this, fluency in courage.
That one's quite profound, isn't it? Sarah seemed really moved by it in the transcript.
Yeah, you could feel it. Why is framing it as fluency and courage so impactful, do you think?
Because learning, especially something like a new language or a complex skill, requires immense vulnerability. It takes courage to show up, to try, to risk making mistakes, to feel uncertain.
Right, it's emotionally demanding.
Very. So Evan is saying that act itself, that willingness to engage despite the fear or discomfort, that is a form of fluency. It's fluency in resilience, in bravery. It shifts the focus from just the output to the inner strength being demonstrated.
Wow, okay. That really changes things. It validates the struggle, the effort itself as an achievement.
Precisely. It's incredibly validating.
Okay, so building on this theme of inner state and self-perception, they introduce this lovely little practice,
Huh.
the mini mindset moment, the self-kindness check-in.
Ah, yes, the practical tool.
It seems so simple. Sit or stand still, hand on your chest. Take one slow breath. Inhale, exhale, and then whisper these affirmations. Let's break them down.
Okay.
I am learning, just acknowledging the present moment, the process.
Mm-hmm. Validating that it is a process, not a fixed state.
Then I am growing. Recognizing that development is happening, even if it's slow or unseen sometimes.
Right. Countering that feeling of being stuck.
I am allowed to make mistakes.
Ah!
That one's huge. Permission to be imperfect.
Absolutely crucial for lowering the stakes and reducing anxiety. Mistakes are part of learning, not proof of failure.
And finally, I will keep going. A statement of commitment, of resilience.
Yeah, a gentle promise to yourself. These affirmations together, they directly target that negative self-talk, don't they?
They really do. It's like actively rewriting the internal script.
Mm.
And the physical part, hand on the chest. The breath that seems important too.
It grounds the practice, makes it feel more embodied, less abstract. It's a literal way of offering yourself comfort and support like you would a friend.
And Evan suggests doing this at key times. Waking up, feeling stuck, wanting to give up, like having little anchors of self-compassion ready.
Exactly. It's about integrating this self-kindness into the rhythm of your life, especially when challenges arise. It builds that emotional muscle, that positive mindset.
Okay, this leads us to the final, really deep point Sarah makes. She says, learning English isn't just about language. It's about healing.
That takes it to another level.
Healing what, though? She mentions healing the beliefs that you're not smart enough, brave enough, worthy of being heard. That connects language learning right back to our core sense of self-worth.
It does. Because for many people, the struggles in learning, especially language, can trigger those deep-seated insecurities. Past experiences, old messages we received, they can all surface.
So learning becomes this arena where those old wounds or limiting beliefs get poked.
Sometimes, yes. But Sarah's insight is that the process can also be transformative by facing those challenges, by finding your voice, by connecting. You're not just learning grammar, you're potentially healing those old beliefs. You're proving them wrong through your actions.
Wow. So the act of learning, of persevering, can actually help dismantle those feelings of inadequacy.
That's the potential she's pointing to. It's a journey of self-discovery as much as skill acquisition.
And then Evan's response is just the perfect capstone. But you are so deeply worthy. And your voice, it matters in any language.
Such a powerful affirmation. It brings it all back to inherent worth, separate from skill level or perceived fluency. Your voice, your perspective, you matter. Period.
That's a really beautiful, empowering place to land.
It truly is.
So, wrapping up our deep dive into Sarah and Evan's conversation, man, there's a lot to take away. For everyone listening, I think the big things are, this isn't a race, okay? It's your path.
Right. And value the effort, the courage, not just the perfect results.
Yeah, that quiet effort counts. Setbacks, They're normal, part of the climb, like Evan said. And coming back after a break, you're coming back stronger.
Mm-hmm. And redefine fluency for yourself. It's about connection. It's about courage. You're probably more fluent than you think.
And maybe the deepest layer. This learning journey can actually be healing.
Hmm.
It can help you see just how capable and worthy you already are.
Exactly. Their whole message is really an invitation, isn't it? To be kinder to yourself, more patient, to recognize that every step, every try, it all matters. It's meaningful.
It's been a fantastic discussion, really digging into this. Thanks for bringing this source to the table.
My pleasure. It felt like a conversation worth sharing and exploring.
Definitely. While they often talk about language learning,
Mm.
these ideas, they apply much wider, right? Learning any new skill, facing a big challenge at work, any kind of personal growth thing.
Definitely. Anywhere you might hit those walls of self-doubt, your mental game is just as crucial as, the actual techniques you're using.
Okay, so let's start to unpack this a bit. One of the first things, for me anyway, was how openly they talk about the discomfort,
Mm.
stepping out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, that feeling. It takes courage, they say. Vulnerability.
It really does.
It,
It's like they're saying, hey, it's okay that this feels kind of awkward or scary. We often try to ignore that part, don't we?
we do. And just acknowledging that, validating it, that's huge. Saying, look, it's supposed to feel a bit uncomfortable sometimes. That's not failure, that's growth.
Right. It normalizes it. So what specifically about those feelings, those self-doubts, stood out to you from what they shared?
Oh, I think it was how direct they were about those thoughts. The I'm not good enough or,
Okay.
I'll never get this language kind of thinking.
Hmm. Oh, yeah. Everyone's been there, surely. If you're trying anything hard, those little voices pop up.
Exactly. And Evan puts it so simply, but it's profound. You are not broken. You're just human.
That's good.
It just reframes everything, doesn't it? It's not a personal flaw. It's just part of the deal of being human and learning. Takes the pressure off.
It really does.
Yeah.
Kind of lets you breathe a bit.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we know these thoughts are normal, human,
Mhm.
what do we do about them? Sarah talks about belief tracking. How does that actually work?
Right. So belief tracking, it's essentially about becoming aware of that automatic negative chatter in your head.
Catching it in the act.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Sarah uses the example like, you make a mistake speaking and boom, I'm so stupid. Belief tracking is stopping right there and noticing that thought. Just seeing it.
So you don't immediately buy into it. You just sort of observe it.
Exactly. You create a little distance, you see the mistake, you see the thought, I'm stupid, but you pause before you accept it as truth. And then this is the key part Sarah mentions, you deliberately rewrite it. You consciously swap out, I'm so stupid, for something, well, more helpful. Like, okay, I'm learning here. This is part of how it works.
Right. Actively changing the script in your head.
Yeah.
But, I mean, does just changing the words really make that much difference deep down?
Well, according to Evan, it absolutely does. He says, changing your language changes your brain, which sounds big, but think about it like paths in a forest.
Oh, okay.
The more you walk down one path, the negative thought path, the clearer and easier it gets. By consciously choosing a different path, a different thought, I'm learning, this is okay, you start carving out a new, more positive neural pathway. You're literally gradually rewiring things.
Wow. So it's not just like positive thinking fluff. It's actual cognitive work.
That's the idea, yeah. Cognitive restructuring. And Sarah's own story really brings this home, doesn't it? About moving to a new country.
Oh, yeah, that was powerful. Describing feeling, was it invisible, small?
Mm-hmm. Even though from the outside, she was doing all the right things, trying, putting in the effort, It just shows how much can be going on underneath.
Totally. You see someone practicing, talking, and you think they've got it all figured out. But inside, maybe they're battling those same doubts.
Exactly. And that's why her story is so validating for anyone listening who feels that way, that hidden struggle. She's saying, yeah, I get it. I've been there too.
And she talks about progress being one sentence at a time, one awkward conversation at a time.
Yeah, it's about those small steps, isn't it? Showing up, even when it feels hard, even when you don't see massive changes overnight. Just keep taking those small actions.
Which kind of flows right into another big point they make. Progress isn't, a straight line upwards.
Oh, definitely not. Sarah calls it messy, and that's such a good word for it.
It is messy. You have bursts where you feel like you're flying.
Yeah.
Then, bam, a plateau. Or even feeling like you're going backwards sometimes.
Totally normal. It's just the nature of learning anything complex. It ebbs and flows.
And it's in those messy bits, the plateaus, where it's easy to get discouraged, right? You're putting in the work, but the results aren't obvious.
Exactly. Which fuels those negative thoughts again. See? I knew I couldn't do this.
Loop.
The loop. That's why both of them, Evan and Sarah, really stress how important it is to notice and celebrate the small wins.
Even tiny things.
Especially tiny things. Understanding a sentence you didn't get before, replying a bit more confidently, even if it wasn't perfect, managing to ask for directions. Those are real progress.
So shifting your focus from some huge fluency goal way off in the distance to what you actually managed today.
Precisely. Recognizing the journey itself, not just the destination. And speaking of the journey, they also talk about needing to, take breaks. Rest.
Yes. Resting without quitting. I like that phrasing.
Me too.
Yeah.
It's giving yourself permission to pause, to recharge your batteries when you need it without seeing it as giving up.
Because pushing yourself too hard constantly, that leads to burnout, doesn't it? Which is definitely counterproductive.
Absolutely. It's about self-compassion, knowing it's okay to slow down. It's not weakness. It's actually smart strategy for the long haul. Thinking marathon, not sprint.
Yeah, good analogy. And woven through all this, they just keep dropping these really direct, encouraging messages, like booster shots for your confidence.
Yeah, things like, you're doing enough, or you are enough.
Your journey is valid, and your English is improving every single day, even when it doesn't feel like it. Just straight up affirmations.
And hearing those, especially when you're feeling down or frustrated, can be so powerful. It's like an antidote to the inner critic, a supportive voice cutting through the noise.
Definitely. And then there's that really simple, practical thing they suggest, just taking a deep breath. Seems almost too simple.
But it's incredibly effective, isn't it? That conscious inhale and exhale. It just brings you right back to the present moment.
Like hitting a reset button.
Exactly. It breaks the cycle of anxious thoughts or self-criticism spinning around. It reminds you, okay, right here, right now, I'm okay. I can handle this. A little moment of calm.
A little anchor, yeah. Okay, and then as a sort of final, really practical tool, they introduce the 3 A's. Can you break those down for us?
Sure. So the first A is awareness. Simple enough, just noticing the negative thought when it pops up. Developing that internal radar.
Okay, awareness, got it.
The second A is acceptance. This is maybe counterintuitive. You don't fight the thought. You don't wrestle with it. You just acknowledge it, almost neutrally, like Sarah suggests, thinking, there's that thought again.
So not judging the judgment.
Exactly. Just letting it be there for a second without resisting.
Okay. Awareness, acceptance, and the third A.
Is adjustment. And this is where you actively but gently shift it. You replace the unhelpful thought with something more balanced, more realistic, more, kind.
Like those examples Evan gave.
Yeah, perfect example. So I'm bad at speaking gets adjusted to maybe speaking is challenging sometimes, but I'm making progress. Or I don't know enough becomes I'm learning new things constantly.
It sounds like a really clear, usable system. Awareness, acceptance, adjustment, the 3 A's.
It is. And it's something you can practice anytime, anywhere. It's like training a muscle, the muscle of constructive self-talk.
And Evan makes the point that this isn't just about feeling better inside, right? It affects how you actually act and what you achieve.
Absolutely. How you think about yourself directly influences your confidence, your willingness to take risks, how you interact with people. It ripples outwards. It changes what you believe is possible for yourself.
Which ties back to what Sarah said about the whole point not just being about, say, learning English.
Right. It's about becoming a more confident version of yourself, a more compassionate version. The learning goal is kind of the vehicle for that deeper transformation.
That really elevates the whole process, doesn't it? It's not just a task, it's personal growth.
Exactly. It's about who you become along the way. More resilient, more self-aware, more accepting. That's arguably more valuable than the skill itself sometimes.
And finally, Evan's point about systems over goals. How does that fit in here?
It's basically saying focus less on the huge, far-off destination, like perfect fluency, and more on building reliable, positive processes now.
Like practicing the 3 A's regularly. Or making time for those small win celebrations.
Exactly. Those are the systems. If you focus on consistently doing those positive actions, the progress, the goal, tends to take care of itself over time. The system guides you, even when motivation dips.
That takes some pressure off, too. You don't have to achieve this massive thing today. Just stick to the system, do the small things.
Precisely. It's about building sustainable habits, that resilient mindset. That's the foundation for continuous improvement, not just in this one area, but, in anything you tackle later.
Well, this has been incredibly helpful, I think. Thank you, everyone listening, for letting us dive deep into this material from Sarah and Evan with you.
Yeah, we really hope pulling out these threads on mindset and self-belief gives you something tangible, a shortcut maybe, to apply on your own journey.
It's been a great discussion. And remember, it's not just about knowing this stuff, is it?
Not at all. It's about actually trying it out, experimenting with these ideas, belief tracking. The 3 A's in your day-to-day life. See what works for you.
So as we wrap up, maybe one final thought for you to take away. Think about one specific negative belief you hold. Could be about learning, could be about anything where you feel a bit stuck. Just pick one.
Got one in mind.
Okay. Now, just consider for a moment. How could you apply those 3 A's as awareness, acceptance, adjustment, just gently, to that specific belief? What might that adjustment sound like?
Just planting that seed. Because that small conscious shift done consistently, it can really add up. It can make a surprising difference over time.
A really powerful thought to end on. So we'll leave it there for this deep dive. Remember what your sources shared. Notice those small wins. Be kind to yourself on the path and trust the process. Keep showing up.